Well, welcome everybody to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Vicki, brilliant to have you here early in the morning for you. And so to start with, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people about the great work that you do?
Sure. Hi, good morning, Alan. My name is Vicki Longo from the USA. I currently work for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals on their sales team in the inflammation and immunology division. I've been here for almost 30 years, but I'm also a joy kindler, and I'm a keynote speaker and an author, and I speak about joy every day and how it brings change in our life and the importance of having a spiritual basis to lean in. As we all know, the world is very weary right now. And despite everything that's going on, you can still have joy and happiness in your heart, even when you have struggles, even in sorrow, and even in adversity. It's about leaning into gratitude and living a values-based life, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you, because joy is a very important value to me.
Yeah, well, it's important to me as well, because one of my 5 core values is enjoyment. So I refer to it as enjoyment rather than joy. And my definition of enjoyment, I'd be interested to get your view on this actually. So it's to remind myself how lucky I am to be doing whatever I'm doing. That's my definition of enjoyment. So whether it's doing the dishes or weeding the backyard or whatever it is, just to remember how lucky you are.
That's actually a really beautiful way to look at it. I might spin one word, and I'm changing the word lucky to fortunate.
Okay.
Because I don't believe in luck. I feel that life is about how we embrace the wisdom of our elders and the wisdom of the knowledge that has been given to us, and that we create fortune by leaning into the things that really matter and the things that I'm having trouble putting it into words. But yes, I believe that you enjoy because so like when I talk about enjoying life, I put in the word in parentheses. Yeah. So it's enjoy because it comes from within and it's eternal. And it's something that's gifted to us at birth versus happiness, which is circumstantial, it's fleeting, it's in the moment. Yeah. And it's a lot of times it's based on things, where joy is based on exactly what you said. It's in that pleasurable moment when you're in a seat of awe, when you're using your hands, and when you're actually doing something where you're actually flowing. So you're not even thinking about it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having joy. I just noticed a sunset. I just smelled the grass that I cut. So I love that enjoyment is one of your core values.
All right. Well, let's see what card we're going to get. So I'm just going to tip the ValuesJam cards out now. How many piles, Vicki, shall I make in front of me?
Make 4 piles.
4 piles, okay. Then they're not particularly even. It doesn't matter. Okay. So would you like pile 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Pile 2.
Pile 2. Okay. So we've got 9 cards here. So number between 1 and 9.
Card 2.
Card 2. Ooh. How about this one then? We have responsibility.
Responsibility. Wow,
the first question is this: what does responsibility mean, and what does it look, feel, and sound like?
Okay, so responsibility looks like a person that takes ownership and is personally responsible for their values, their actions, their behavior, and has a commitment and a disciplined lifestyle. What does it feel like? What does it feel like? It feels like a very controlled life in a good way because it's disciplined. And what was the other question? Look like, sound like?
So look like, sound like, feel like.
Feel like. Okay, responsibility feels like an adult. Responsibility feels like a person who has wisdom, who's matured, who knows who they are, who goes through life looking at the experience of life from a perspective of wisdom, and that with responsibility, you can be counted on, you're dependable, and you're you're in your family, you're the person that can be counted on to keep the home afloat. Oh, it's such a good word. It means so much. It really it is, because without responsibility, there's really no freedom. So freedom comes from being a responsible person, because you actually live your life with impact, and you take time to take seriously the gifts you've been given and how you use them.
Yeah.
So for responsibility, there's just so many things I could think of, like, when I think about the people in my life that I'm responsible for, but then I think about the people that were responsible for me. And then I think about the accountability part of it at work. If I'm responsible to do a project and deliver a project, you say what you mean and you mean what you say and you do it. You're dependable. So interesting.
And you know what I love about Values Jam is that it does what you've just done actually. So you start with this word and it's responsibility, and then you start to say something, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it starts to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
And I agree with all of what you've talked about, but there's another dimension actually that I want to add into the equation, and that is that I think responsibility has a kind of best friend called privilege.
Mm,
And I believe that with responsibility comes privilege, because it's quite easy to give responsibility a bit of a bad rep, in that, some people think of it as a burden and all of the stuff that comes with responsibility. And, you people have to depend on you and you've got to deliver and all of that.
mm,
Whereas I like to think of responsibility, and I've always done it, whether it be in my personal life or in my professional life. Whenever I've been given a responsibility, I've been really thankful that somebody's chosen me for that responsibility rather than somebody else, which is often the possibility. And then
mm.
to hold that privilege so that you don't feel burdened, that you actually feel the joy of the responsibility. And I find that that has helped me anyway to perform at a different level. So has that kind of thinking crossed your mind ever, or what do you think of it?
Yeah, I use that terminology as I get to. So when I'm responsible for something, I get to do something versus I have to or I should.
Yeah,
So even at work, if I'm given a responsibility, then I get to do that. I get to lead it, or I get to show my best and use my gifts and skills in that arena. So again, that's really interesting too. And the word privilege is so abused right now. I always felt privileged to just be alive and to have a life, but the way the word privilege is used, especially over here in the States, I think it means different things in different cultures,
yeah,
but around here it's gotten a negative connotation.
yeah,
And they're using it at the detriment of other people. And I don't like it, because you can't really judge a person by how they look and say that they're privileged, because you really don't know their story. And then when you take away the surface and how it might appear, the truth is a lot of us have not grown up with privilege. It just looks that way. And a lot of us have worked very hard. So there is a responsibility, so you can look at it from your perspective, having royalty, right? With that, there's a big responsibility to give back to your community and to care for your people. And I feel that that part of privilege is pretty incredible. And if I had that kind of privilege, I would definitely be more of a servant leader. And I would, it's sort of the philanthropy work that I do with being the joy kindler. When I go out and speak, a lot of the times I don't take an honorarium, and I will either accept a love offering and then that money will be given to whatever that group or that sales, whatever they want to use it for. So you
Yeah.
don't keep the money, because I have a career where I actually still make a living, so I can be generous and philanthropic. So responsibility, gosh, now we're going down another arm, right? So to me, responsibility is, what do you do with the gifts you've been given? Are you a good steward of the money? Are you hoarding it and keeping it, or are you giving to those that need it? So
Yeah.
I feel personally that I have a responsibility to care for the world. I'm a steward of the world. It's been gifted to me. So I should reduce, reuse, and recycle. I feel a responsibility to walk when I can and not use my car. I have a responsibility to throw garbage away, but do it in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
Wow, you have just opened up a can of worms with the word responsibility.
But
That's amazing.
the way that you were describing responsibility then, when you were talking about being a good steward, disposing of your trash in the right way, walking,
Yeah.
etc., all of that sort of stuff. The way that you framed it was not in this kind of beholden to somebody else kind of way. It was I am taking control of this responsibility rather than I have to do it for somebody else, which is a big, big
Yeah.
difference. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to, I think, where I learned that thing about privilege and responsibility. You're familiar with Intercontinental hotels, I guess. So
Yes, I am.
Intercontinental hotel brand. So the Mayfair Intercontinental is in
Yes,
London near Green Park
I
Tube
stayed
Station.
there.
Have you? When did you stay
I
there?
did last year.
Last year. Okay.
My
So
husband,
it's it's no
I
it's
got
no
treated to a
longer
good night.
okay. It's no longer an Intercontinental now, but it was the general manager, a lady called Dagmar Woodward, that was my boss when I was the food and beverage director there. And
You were?
pardon?
You were? You were the food and beverage director?
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh, cool.
a Japanese company bought the Intercontinental Hotel Group, a company called Seibu Seizai, I think they were called. And their head office was one block away from the Mayfair Hotel. And I remember lots of people in London, because there are 4 or 5 Intercontinentals in London, people saying to us, uh, those guys are going to be on your doorstep and they're going to be in there all the time. And what a responsibility that's going to be, because you're going to have to be, on your best case. And I remember Dagmar saying, no, you got it wrong, guys. It's going to be an absolute privilege for us to be able to welcome them. And she actually used it as a short circuit to the most senior guys in the company to get projects done that she needed to be done and all of this sort of stuff. So that was the root of me kind of learning about responsibility, having this best buddy of privilege. So let's
I love I
let's take
love that. I don't think I've ever put those two words together, but
right.
I really like the connotation. I really like the inflection of what that means. Maybe you should talk to some world leaders.
Maybe. Now, this, I'll tell you another story that I think I've probably used on different values jams. So if anybody's listening and this is they're hearing it again, apologies for that. But it was you'll gather from the story about the Mayfair that was my first career in commercial hospitality management. So I was running a conference center and had the performance review with the head chef. And he said to me, I just want to thank you for something that you made me aware of several months ago, because it's really changed my outlook. And I said, oh, what was that, Steve? And he said, you told me that my team of 20 odd chefs was a big responsibility, but it was also a great privilege, because it was up to me to determine the mood that they went home with, and were therefore with their family and their friends and their partners and their children. And I really took that on board. And now, before people go home every night, I thank them for their work and I send them home in a great mood, because it's important to me that they live their lives outside of work in a positive way, and I can perform some form of role in that. So the you expressed an interest in the two words going together. There's just another little story.
It's beautiful. Imagine if every person did that for their people.
That's the thing. And actually,
Imagine.
it's not a great deal of effort to do that.
No, it's not. It's what I do every day. It's how I leave my physicians. It's how I leave people in the audience. Um, it doesn't take that much effort to help someone recognize that you work, but you don't live to work. You work to live, or however that saying goes,
Yeah,
right? Like, live freely so others can freely live. Like, go to work, do the labor, and put your all in and do your job for the day. But then you also have to have that separation. I like to say that we calendar block. You have 3 8-hour segments in your day. You have 8 hours of work, you have 8 hours of sleep, and you have 8 hours of time to do whatever it is that you do. And I always, one of the things I talk about is, are you wasting your heartbeats? Are you using your time responsibly?
yeah,
Do you use your time well? And I can think of lots of times when I waste time, right? Or I procrastinate, or, and you don't know how many heartbeats you're born with. So, I'm going to be 60 next year. What are we doing with our time? Right. And how do we responsibly make it matter? I want to get to the end and be, look back and say, wow, I lived my legacy. I participated in an exercise several years ago with a wonderful person who recently passed away. His name is Bruce Van Horn. And he had a podcast over 800 episodes called Life is a Marathon. And I did a session with him where I wrote my eulogy. And
okay.
then he had me write a letter to myself from my husband and my daughter, what I would want them to say to me if I was dying. It is a remarkable exercise because it sobers you instantly. And then you ask yourself, okay, if that's how I want to be remembered, am I living that way every day?
Yeah.
Am I being responsible to the values that I say mean something to me? And am I living those values out, or am I living out somebody else's values? Am I doing the work that I'm called to do, sharing my gifts? Am I saying yes to things I shouldn't say yes to, which is another story? I say no now because I need to get to my best yeses. And yeah, there's a lot of things I can do that I want to do that people ask me to do. But you know what? If you give yourself the pause, I always say, hey, give me 24 hours. Let me take a look at that. And even if I want to do it, I have to look at my calendar and realize that, if I do that, I might not be able to write my content for next week, or I might not be able to do this call with you. And it's very hard for a people pleaser. Well, I'm a recovering people pleaser, but I just, I want to help people because I'm a helper.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to say no because you only have so many minutes every day. So again, you've got me thinking about all the ways, am I being responsible even to myself?
Well, that's what was coming through for me, is that, when we're leading our lives, especially somebody like you, when you're working for a large company, it's kind of easy to focus on your responsibilities in your job role.
Yeah.
But exactly like you say, what is less visible perhaps is your responsibility to yourself and
Yeah.
people around you.
Yeah.
And why is it that? I suppose it's because it's easier to give up on that stuff, because who's going to know, rather than give up on your corporate responsibilities where everybody's going to know and you're going to see the consequence of it perhaps.
Yeah.
That's it. And the eulogy story, I've used that exercise as well. It is hugely powerful because what are people going to say about us when we're not here anymore? That's the thing, and not that
Yeah.
it mattered to us anymore.
There's a video that went viral on Instagram, and it's a woman that walks by an old house, and it's an inn, and her husband are staying there for the weekend. And she calls it, 100 years from now, we're not going to be here. 100 years from now, the house that we live in, we're not going to be living in it, and our ancestors most likely will not be living in it. 100 years from now, all the books on that shelf over there and all the plants that I have and everything that I have accumulated in my lifetime will not be a part of me and probably will not be a part of our daughter's life or her children's life. So, what are we doing right now? And if you think about 100 years from now, we're lucky if we'll be a picture hanging on someone's wall because people aren't even printing their pictures out anymore and there's no photo albums and how many people journal or write their history anymore and are a memory keeper. So this video is so almost unsettling because it speaks to the fragility that we're only here for an amount of time, and all the things that we make matter, everything that we think is so important, and the arguments and the stuff we hold on to, it doesn't matter. But we think having that next car matters, and we think wearing that brand of clothes matters, and that kind of makeup, and eating that food, and all these things that are so ego based and so market driven by a culture that sells us the belief that we'll be better when, we'll be happier if. And this video, I've probably watched it 10 times. If I can find it, I'll send it to you. But it's basically just about legacy. So,
yeah,
I'm one of those people that loves my grandparents' pictures and I treasure them and I cherish them. But what if I was one of the people that had one of those homes in California that burnt to the ground?
yeah,
Or these people who get, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunami. Like, what happened if something just wiped my house out and all my stuff was taken? Who am I? Right? What's left? How will you remember me? You'll remember me because I was kind. You'll remember me because I went out of my way. You'll remember me because I said I love you. You'll remember me because I've, maybe touched your heart in a way. I don't know. Like, that's so important to me to be responsible for how people remember me. I want to be remembered because my tagline, Alan, is remembering, connecting, and celebrating life. So, if you want to be remembered and you want to be connected, then you have to celebrate what you have and not what you don't have, and be responsible and cherish what you own, but not to the point that it takes away from who you are. Right?
definitely. And there's a whole load of stuff that you've said there that I wanted to come back on some of, and I think that it's connected by the concept of time. So these three things that I'm going to mention. So the first, you talked about we only have a certain number of heartbeats and we don't know how many that is. This is a bit of a confession actually, but I hate to waste time. So for instance, if the kettle is boiling before I pour myself a hot drink, I have to wipe down the counter if there are crumbs on there or anything like that. I have to do something. Go on.
Me too.
And sometimes people say, why can you not just relax for 1 second? But actually, I think of it like this, that if I mop down those crumbs now, I'm not going to have to do it as a special job another time.
Right.
This is my grandmother's fault actually, and I remember her words. She would say, Alan, if you're going upstairs, take that book that's on the bottom stair up with you
Right.
to
Right.
save somebody else doing it or to save you doing it as a special job. And
Right.
imagine if you do that 100 times during the day, you've probably created at least 15 minutes that you can have extra that you wouldn't have had if you had behaved in a different way. So that's the first thing, that use of responsible use of time. You talked about people don't keep photographs and stuff like that anymore and don't keep a record. There's a guy that I know who has a startup business called Aftercloud, which is basically creating your digital record of your life.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And this was created when I think that it I'm not sure if it was his mum or maybe his wife's mum died,
Mhm.
and their son, you know how it goes when somebody dies. It's like scrabble around, try and find as many photos as you can, all of that stuff.
Make the board. Let's make the board.
Yeah. So his son said, why didn't we do this in advance?
Oh,
And so they've created AfterCloud, and you can do things like you capture a record of special events, of photographs, voice recordings, videos. How cool is that? So imagine that at Vicky's funeral, you've got all this stuff there, and you can say this is what she was like. Let's celebrate her, rather than the downbeat version that tends to be
yes,
what happens. And so
yes.
that was the second one, and I've probably
Love
forgotten
that.
the now.
Remembering, connecting, and celebrating.
Oh no, so time. The third one was you talked quite a bit about legacy,
Yeah.
and this is again connected to our time on this planet, because I
Mhm.
think the general conception is that when we die, we're done.
Mhm.
And so at the beginning, no, it was around the beginning of this year. That's right. I was thinking to myself, well, why? Why do we have to accept that? And so this past year, I've been just doing some research and exploration around how I might be able to provide the means for boys from not a particularly privileged background like I was to be able to have a better life than they would have done without some additional support.
Mhm.
And so the way that it's going is that the school that I went to, um, probably it will be some form of bursary and mentor scheme for kids that are not from a great background, to provide them with, let's say, the money to get a decent laptop to start off with when they leave school,
Mm.
and perhaps to have somebody that's from a better background to guide them and mentor them and maybe open doors for them, which they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. And
Yeah.
imagine if that could be funded from, I don't know, sales of books that I've written or whatever it is,
I
so that
love that.
I don't need to be here to have that positive impact. So my challenge to myself was, how can I extend the time by which I'm having a positive impact, even though I might no longer be here? So those three things,
Oh, I
the
love that.
use of time, the after cloud, and then the legacy thing.
Sounds like you have a good plan.
Well, it's not quite finalized yet, but it's the concept is kind of well established. So the next bit should be easy enough to do.
I love that. I think legacy is a big part of responsibility. I think I think that is responsibility. I think whatever the legacy is, what are we leaving our children, right? Like what are we leaving the next generation? That is huge for responsibility. I think about that all the time. My parents are not financially sound. My dad was blue collar electrician. He barely reads and writes. My mom and dad had me when they were 17 and 18. They made the beautiful decision to keep me, and that's a whole other story about my story. About imagine if I wasn't here and
Yeah,
what the world would be like if they decided to discard me because I was an inconvenience and a mistake.
yeah,
But, my mom will tell you to this day that it was never, ever, ever a thought in her mind she was having me. And they got married, and I have two sisters, and it's 70 years later, and everybody's happy. And it was hard. Life was hard, and it was different. And I struggled a lot growing up because we didn't have anything, but
yeah,
we had love. And I say it all the time. My parents, we weren't rich, but I was enriched. I knew what it meant to give, even when you didn't have, like, I think about this all the time. My parents didn't have credit cards. So our clothes were bought on layaway. And my mom would go to the store and give $1 a week till the money, till it was paid off. And my sisters and I had shoes and a new outfit for school. There were times when my mom bought groceries and my dad, got paid cash. And he was like, you have to take some of the canned goods back. We don't have enough money for the week. We had one car. Um, I think about like, but I never knew it. I never knew that I had what I needed. We ate, we had clothes, Whether they came from the thrift shop or not, I was none the wiser until the kids made fun of me in school when I was wearing their clothes. So that's when I found out that I was different. But even when we had drives, like hand drives, when the poor people needed something, my mom always took something out of the cabinet. It might have been a can of soup, but we always had something to give. I'm getting emotional talking about it now because my parents took responsibility seriously, and they instilled in my sisters and I the values and what it means to give and not take.
Yeah, so
And
Vicky,
you know,
that's a beautiful story because it it really emphasizes how money and wealth
yeah,
and privilege is
yeah,
not required for you to take responsibility,
no,
right? And
no,
I'm thinking of my mum. We, I can't ride a bicycle because I never had a bike when I was a child, you know.
right,
But my one of my neighbours had a scooter, and when we were 16, he said to me, "Do you want to have a go?" So there was a hill not very far away from my house, and I didn't know how scooters worked. I'd seen people on motorbikes, and I'd
right,
seen people how you lean and it goes around the corner, right? That
right.
so I come down this hill on this scooter, leaned to my left, and crashed straight into this car. And that I luckily wasn't hurt or anything like that. Went home to my mum and said, I've just crashed into what was he called, Mr. Wellstead, I think it was the neighbour. And so she said, "So what are you going to do about it?" So I said, what do you mean?"
Yeah,
And she said, "Well, best you go and knock on his door and tell him what you've done."
yeah,
So, I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, that's what you have to do. No
yeah,
questions." So I went and knocked on his door, and he was not very pleased. But I don't think we even had to pay for it in the end. But that story just popped into my head when you were talking about
yeah,
how the responsibility that your parents instilled in you.
yes,
I
yeah.
still can't. I I pay off my credit cards all the time. I save up for
Me,
something before I buy something.
me too.
I can't do it.
I know. I know. And our daughter is struggling with a credit card. And I'm like, Kelsey, we told you from the beginning, if you can't afford it, you don't buy it. Like, give them $100 bill. See how that feels to let someone take $100 bill out of your hand, right? Like, I mean, I was there. We all do it. But yes, responsibility. There's rules and there are certain boundaries that you need to follow. And, I see a lot of young children today, they don't have the boundaries because no one's really showing them the way and they're learning off of social media. I mean, I notice all the time because I work in New York City. So I see a lot of people with, babies with nannies. The nannies are on the phone. The kids are crying. No one's paying attention to the kids. It's like all about social media. And, I see young moms, it's all about the Instagram post. It's not about the moment. It's
Yeah,
about the moment they're creating to put on Instagram so their life looks like a certain way. And I think it's devastating because I remember my mom was always engaged with my sisters and I. She was a stay at home mom for most of my life. She went back to work when I was older. But, my mom never really complained. She was responsible for her girls
yeah,
and made sure we were clean and we had baths and our hair was curled. And, and I wonder if I didn't do that as well for Kelsey now that we're talking about it. I'm thinking about what were the shortcuts I took or what were the things that I gave up to let someone else do for me so I could be more responsible at work and less responsible at home.
yeah.
So the
Maybe,
housekeeper, the cook, whatever. I'm just
yeah,
making it up.
yeah. And it's also a very different world, isn't it? Because I think somehow it was easier for our mums to be responsible and take responsibility, even though they were in tough times.
Yeah.
Where I went to see a comedian recently, and what was it he said? He said, "Oh yeah," he said, "There's a lot that there is a connection here, but bear with me." He said, "Bullying There's
Mhm.
all sorts of talk about bullying in schools going on at the moment.
Yes.
And he said, but bullying has been there forever. And he said, the difference, though, is that I used to come home from school and there was no bullying until the next day.
Right.
Whereas the whole social media thing is that is or can be
Yes,
continuous for people.
it is.
And so I think, what you said about have you made the right choices and all the rest of it, it's a very, very different world that we live in. But partly because of the connectedness and because of social media. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure you can apply the same rules as you used to be able to apply anymore.
No, but I still think we can protect our children longer. You know, our daughter was one of the last ones to get a flip phone. We just said no, you know. And honestly, I wish I would have waited even longer because it started right away. And
Yeah.
then it was what kind of phone you have. Oh, you have a flip phone, I have this. It became a constant competitive, just like everything else, right? And we gave her our 16-year-old Honda CRV when she started to drive. I got that car when she was 3 years old because I took a hiatus from work and stayed home to raise her and did more philanthropy and volunteer and Girl Scout leader kinds of things, Sunday school teacher. So my husband, when I left my job the first time, we got this very inexpensive Honda CRV that was like a tin can. And when Kelsey got her driver's license, we gave her that car and it rattled. And she came home one day and she was crying and she said, Dad, I have the worst car in the school parking lot. Everyone else has BMWs and Lexus. And John's like, well, I'm sorry, Kels, that's the car that we gave you. Mom and I had to buy cars. We didn't get cars given to us, but you're just lucky you have four wheels and a steering wheel, right? So one day John had to go to the parking lot to drop something off in her car. And she came home that night and we heard the muffler rattle and she comes up the driveway and John starts laughing and she walks in the back door and he goes, Kelsey, you know what? She goes, what, Dad? He goes, you really do have the worst car in the school parking lot. And that makes me so happy because we wanted her to recognize that you have to work for things. You have to earn them. You don't just but that's the problem with her generation. They want what we have now, and they don't realize that it took us 35 years of our career to get here.
Yeah.
And you can't just, even the kids that I, talk to at work, they expect to come in commanding a salary that I'm making now with, a master's degree and 30 years of experience and life. I just, where's the responsibility? Who's telling them that they deserve that? Who's telling them in college that they've earned that? So
And I think that
again,
just now when I said it, times are different. I think that our parents our parents had a greater deal of influence over their environment, whereas social media is a tsunami
mhm,
onto everybody's environment. And so,
yeah,
whether you like it or not, is there. And your degree of influence is reduced proportionately compared to what it was like for our parents. Like
yeah,
that story about the accident with the car. I had no argument to my mum. I
right,
couldn't say, oh, but this happened on social. Nobody's ever done this. Have you seen this on YouTube? I couldn't do any of that. It was like
right,
just toe the line.
right. We were taught you break somebody's window, you pay
Yeah,
for it. You're
yeah,
playing ball,
yeah.
or you steal a piece of gum, and I find out you're going back to the store, you're telling the manager, and we're paying for it, even though it was 2 cents. I'll never forget the time I got caught with the bazooka in my pocket, the chewing gum. My mom, where did you get that? I'm like, oh, I got it at the store. My mom's like, I was at the store with you. We didn't buy gum. And I'm like, oh, no, no, I got it at the store. I got marched right back to the store. I had to tell the manager it was 2 cents. And my mom made me pay for it out of my allowance. I got 25 cents a week allowance. It's like crazy. It was crazy. But like when I think about it, yeah, I was never going to steal a piece of gum again
Yeah.
because it meant that much to me. Now you see on the news people looting. like people just breaking in stores and taking hundreds of thousands. And I'm like, where are their parents? My
Well,
mother would have killed me.
I've got a theory about this, which is not at all well formed, and
Okay.
totally lacking in evidence. Um, I don't know if you know, but in the UK during COVID, the very senior people in government were discovered to been having parties.
I think I saw that on the news.
Okay. Similarly, for PPE procurement, there was a really dodgy fast lane process for people that were connected with people in government.
Okay.
And so when I see on the local neighborhood app that there are teenagers causing a problem in the fast food store because they're either snatching people's phones or they're riding their bikes into people, I put the two together because if a 16-year-old sees that the most senior people in society don't have to take responsibility and don't have to adhere to any rules and regulations,
Hmm.
who can really blame them for taking the same approach?
Yep.
And
No
I
leadership.
don't know if anybody would ever be able to prove that connection, but it just feels like it's there.
Yeah, it's almost like na 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 na, right? It's almost like, oh, if you can do it, I can do it too. Like do as I
Yeah,
say, not as I do.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
it,
I
it's
think they
probably
were angry too. I think they were
yeah,
angry
yeah,
and they lacked responsibility.
totally right, totally right. So let's wrap up this values jam, Vicky. It's been great fun, and the
Yes,
last
thank you.
question is this: what are you encouraged to do differently about responsibility as a result of our conversation?
I think I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I think I'm a very responsible person, but I definitely will reflect on it more deeply. And I'm going to take a look at the areas where I haven't been as responsible as I should be, like my diet and exercise. And I think I'm going to be more responsible because I'm the only one that controls that. So, I have a couple areas in my life where I've been lacking in discipline and I break appointments with myself for other people. So I'm going to make sure that when I calendar block and I take time to read or go for a walk or prep food, I'm going to do those things because it matters for me versus doing the thing for somebody else, which I feel sometimes is more important. So there's a lot of juicy tidbits that I'm taking away from this conversation. And I think that that word really resonates with me because I also have a responsibility to the calling I have and a responsibility to keep being a kindler of joy and to be the chief joy officer of myself so I can be that for other people because the
Yeah,
world is weary and people need a message of hope. And I've authored a book with other people called Mission Hope, and it's available on Amazon. And I feel that the chapter that I wrote, which is called Dragons, Dreams, and Dragonflies, I'm here to help people stop breathing fire. And I'm here to help people dream about what a disciplined and responsible life could look like and to help them celebrate when they find their joy again. And I just kind of put that together talking to you. So thank you because there are days where I don't want to do this. I'm tired. I'm working a full time job. I'm taking care of aging parents. Just lost my father in law, still my mom and dad. My dad's battling cancer. My mother in law is living alone in their house with a nurse. Um, there's a lot of responsibility in my life, but I want to make sure that I'm giving the message to other people that there is hope and that there is a promise and that when you have joy, it is eternal. So that when we leave here, just like your legacy in the boys' school with giving them technology, what is it that you're going to leave behind where you can say, yeah, I was responsible. I was responsible for that legacy. I was responsible for that change in the world. I was responsible for my family and friends. I was responsible to be a steward. So I'm going to keep giving my message and I'm not going to give up because that's part of the journey. You know, I'm here to serve, and you've made me realize that it's a responsibility and a privilege to have a voice that people want to listen to, and that I can be a change maker in the world. So thank you.
Well, and you are, Vicky. I suppose the one thing that I would add to you is that you want to be making that change for as long and as well as you possibly can. And the only way you can do that is to take responsibility for yourself. You know, it's the put your own mask on first message in the airplane, isn't it? And so it sounds like you've got a whole load of stuff to be contending with at the moment. And when you said, I enjoy cooking too, so you talked about food prep and going for a walk. And those are the things that you say, oh, well, I'll do this for somebody else and I can get by on that, or I'll skip the walk today. So the next time that choice comes up, either make the choice immediately and protect yourself, or maybe use that strategy that you talked about earlier about the give me a few hours or 24, whatever it is, to help you make a choice that's more focused on you. For me, for responsibility, this has encouraged me to finish off what I started in terms of that legacy conversation, because I'm not there yet, and I'm conscious that it's coming to the end of the year, and my challenge to myself was to sort it out this year. So I'm kind of probably running a bit short as far as that's concerned. And then the other one is a really simple one. I'm going to send you the link for Aftercloud so that you can have a look at that either for yourself or for parents or other people that you know, because it just strikes me as a game changer for death. It's my ex-mother-in-law that really brought this home for me, where she's probably the kindest person I've ever known in my life. And so why can you not continue to remember that after people have gone, rather than regard life and death as being so finite? Why can their spirit not be with us, on a continued basis? If they were such great people, why not? So I'm going to finish with that.
Lovely. And let me know how I can help you.
Okay. Cheers, Vicky. Take care.
Cheers.